Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. We are back with the Ted Show. Super excited to have this young lady on, Viviane Bonfim. I was trying to give my best French, and I messed that up so bad earlier. So Viviane, Viviane's an internationally certified teacher, and we're going to talk about truly one of my favorite topics, which is anything education and education for all. I love it. We were just reminiscing, talking about New York and Manhattan and food, and now I'm starving. So everybody, welcome Viviane. What's up? How's it going? Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here to talk to you.
I'm excited to have you. I loved what you wrote. One of the reasons I always have the guests fill something out before they come on, just so I can get a little bit of insight into them. And I love what you wrote. I looked up all your social media pages. Very cool stuff. So before we get into education for all, I was telling you that the audience loves an origin story. They want to get to know you. So give us a little background on your journey.
Well, I was born in Brazil. I was born in Rio de Janeiro, but my family is from Portugal, from Lisbon, Portugal. And for some reason, my dad was French, so my name is French. I mean, Portugal, France, they're all there. Yeah, so I grew up in a family that we love traveling. We've been all over as a family since I was born. My first passport, I was maybe 2 months old.
Wow.
Mom said. So we've been all around, and I learned English, how to speak English from an early age. English was not my first language when I was born because I fully spoke Portuguese. Well, and then as a young child, I had a younger brother. I remember teaching him how to write and read, supporting him in his homework. And then when I was just older, I was just like, I'm gonna become a teacher. And then I went to college.
You like it. I loved that part of the origin story. You realized early on that you liked the education part. You liked helping people learn. That's a very young age, actually.
Well, my kids now, they are 7. If I ask my students today, so what do you want to be when you grow up? Most of the girls will say doctor or teacher. And I was probably one of them years ago, but I did not change my mind because next year you're probably going to ask my students again and they will say something different, but I stuck to it. Yeah, I became
What about so did you grow up learning French and Portuguese and then English?
No, Portuguese was my first language.
Such a pretty language.
Yeah. And then as a family, we moved to the States when I was 11. My dad worked for the embassy, the Brazilian embassy.
Wow.
Yeah, in Washington, D.C., the embassy. And then we were sent to a consulate in Seattle. That's where I lived for the next 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I went to school in Portland, University of Portland. My parents retired years after that. Now they're back in Brazil, between Brazil and Portugal. And here I am in New York City by myself.
Manhattan. In
the city.
All right. So when did you get the passion? It's one thing to have a passion for education. And you said you didn't shift like most kids do. I mean, people want to be a fireman. A lot of boys, girls want to be firemen, fire people. And then, of course, they change later on. It's like saying I want to be an astronaut. Well, if you add the math to that, there's no way I'm going to be an astronaut, so I'm never going to do that. When did you realize that education was what you wanted to do as an adult? Because it can change as an adult. Did you immediately go, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my education degree, and all I want to do is teach children?
I would say that it did change my mind in terms of the age group that I was going to teach. So in my mind, I was going to be like a high school teacher or a middle school teacher. And now I work with elementary school. So I love the 7-year-olds. I love the 6-year-olds. I teach.
There's an innocence there.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
There's an innocence there. What about the international part? So as an educator, I mean, it's been a 2020 was such a tough year overall for all education and really for all students. Why international? What is it that you wanted to accomplish with that? Are you teaching in other countries? Do you want are other countries school systems where they need improvement? What's the international part, and why is it so important?
Well, I'm a traveler. That's where my money goes. That's where I save money for. So I would love to have the opportunity of combining my two passions, my life as a teacher and traveling. So when I first started thinking about becoming a teacher and traveling at the same time, I was just like, I wouldn't be able to travel like for in the summer. No, that's not me. So what if I get internationally certified and then maybe find a job somewhere in Asia that I can have like my base on and then travel from there to other cities and countries. Nice. So that was the initial idea.
And then what did you do with that? So I love that, because I think anybody who loves to travel, I do too, absolutely love it. If I could find a way to marry travel to my vocation, my passion, I would love that. There's a lot of people who manage to do it, but it can be risky. With education, I would imagine there's never a lack of people who want a certified person who can teach their kids.
Well, there are international schools all over the world. So if you go to Brooklyn, New York, you won't have an international school from France. There's also an international school from Germany in Queens, New York. So if you go to Brazil, there's an American school. That's where I worked years ago. And then I worked at another American school in Portugal. So that's where my certification comes from, and it's directed to. So if I have the idea of working in France, in Japan, in Australia, and they take my certification, which is an acclaimed one, I took a course for that. So I can be hired and live there as an international teacher.
How did 2020 impact you in the education world? What have you seen? And then tell us a little bit about, has 2021 from an education perspective gotten any better?
I would say for every teacher in this country, and I believe in all over the world, it was another college degree.
Agreed.
I think I went back to school again, because never in my dreams or nightmares I would think that I would be teaching full-time, sitting behind the screen for like 8 hours a day, doing something that I never signed up for, doing something that at first I didn't know what to do. Right now, I'm the queen of Zoom.
You've conquered it.
Yeah, but March 2020,
whew,
I didn't know what to do. It was bad. And then having to deal with a lot of other things, and the parents and the kids and all the anxiety, and doing quarantine and pandemic in New York City back in March and April.
Oh God, yes, yes. You guys could barely go outside.
Yes, we couldn't go outside.
Yeah, I had a lot of friends up there, and they told me it was almost like a war zone, especially in the early days, and when the numbers were just outrageous for so many weeks at a time. And I just felt that. My wife is a trained educator, and it was just so difficult in 2020 because you were constantly pivoting. It didn't matter how great you got at the system you were doing. There was some change that was coming in. And then you had, once they finally went back to school, you had students who were in person, you had students who were online, and the online students have parents in the background. So you're constantly balancing this. And I would say to her, it just doesn't seem fair as an educator that you're basically teaching 3 sets of people, because the parents now can sit in on it. And trying to give them an education that actually matters. Is that sort of where your stress was too? Did you have to deal with any of that?
Yeah, it was very stressful, and having to adapt, bring a full curriculum that always worked face-to-face, in person, from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and have that on screen for less amount of time, because a 7-year-old, my students, they can be on Zoom for over an hour so it was an hour, a break, 1 more hour of instruction. It was a challenge. Also, the parents, we had to also instruct them. We also had to help them, support them, and tell them what to do because they had no idea. But now
parents didn't. I don't think anybody knew. We were all going through this unprecedented thing. We did a lot of education focused shows in 2020, mainly because every day it seemed like there was either a complete shutdown or one thing or another the kids were struggling with. And a lot of the schools didn't have the technology to accommodate. And if they did, their Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough. I mean, there were all of these things that nobody could have ever anticipated. What are you seeing in 2021? How's it going?
Well, right now we have the perspective of the vaccine. In New York City, teachers are considered now essential workers.
Good.
So we were able to get our vaccines. I mean, we started 2 months ago. I am fully vaccinated. So now,
phenomenal.
We are going back into the building. I'm still doing blended learning with the kids, but it has brought me a new perspective, and we can see a future. And I feel like maybe for the fall, for next school year, we are going to be able not to introduce 2 days a week, but maybe 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week, and have 1 day at home and have some sort of sense of normalcy, because that's what we need.
That's what it is, right? The kids, you know, the whole world turned upside down. And for kids, it was really, I mean, they're basically at that age, most of them are social beings. And it was just such a challenge to try to get them enough exercise, enough sunlight, enough anything, and still keep their minds going, because we switched. I know Stacy did so much stuff online. It was almost overnight. They had to shift everything. And a lot of kids didn't have the Wi-Fi that was strong enough, maybe didn't have a laptop that was good enough, or had enough memory. And so definitely a challenge, I think, for everybody. Florida, of course, we're always the crazy ones. It's us and Texas and California. But, you know, we at least have somewhat gone back. But it's not 100%.
No, nothing's 100%. And it's funny because when I'm on Zoom with the kids 3 times a week, I let them chat. I open the chat for them.
That's so good.
And I see them like, oh, they miss themselves. They miss the daily contact, talking about dolls and toy cars. Yeah. It's heartbreaking because, you know, we're all, as adults, we're stressed out because it's this whole new thing. And, you know, when you're scrambling for basics like toilet paper in the beginning, your mind's not on education, and you're just trying to get basic human needs fulfilled. And you're not really worried about whether your 7 or 8-year-old can go to practice or go to school. We're all just trying to survive. And I think that was also an added stress to the kids that we didn't take into consideration, that all of our stress, of course, they can sense and feel. So it was this really stressful time for kids, especially. And then when they started not being able to have their proms or their graduations, it just became so much more real and so much more painful, I feel like. Are your kids back at any kind of outside activities? I don't know what New York is like. Can they play things like football or do cheerleading or soccer, or is that all off limits as well? They have recess, and we try to bring them outside if the weather permits. They play, but even the games, they are guided right now.
Yeah.
Even how they can play basketball, they can only jump rope, as an example. Like when they play, they're playing by themselves.
Yes.
The other day, one of my students even said, "Miss Bonfim, I miss field trips. I want to go back to the Bronx Zoo."
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I think most of us are cognizant of it. It's just so hard as a parent And as a teacher, you're dealing with your own adult issues. And then you have to figure out, you have to remember that the kids, they're missing out on a lot. And it doesn't seem like a year would make a difference, but if a month makes the difference, it seems like it's going to be a vacation in the beginning, especially March. I think people are like, woo, I get off school. And we didn't realize how long-term that was going to be and what a long-term impact that was going to have on the well-being of the kids.
That is true. Yeah, I try to bring some sort of normalcy to my kids and have them pajama parties, and I do dance parties with them, especially when we are on screen, and let them have conversations and be. They have been so flexible, and they're
resilient, aren't they? They're so resilient.
Yeah, they know.
And I love that you're giving them that opportunity, because that may be the only opportunity they get to let go during the day. And they need it, because I'm a big believer in, you have to have that other stuff in order for them to have enough energy release to focus. And so they have to have a balance. And we were just struggling to figure out what that balance was in 2020. I mean, I have high hopes for 2021, lots of prayers and positive thoughts. All right, so see how fast it goes? Tell us the best way that somebody can reach out to you. They want to learn more about what you do. They want to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to reach you?
I share a lot on my Instagram profile, on my Instagram page, which is Vivi Bonfim, Vivibonfim. I also share a lot of my work on Facebook, which is Viviane Bonfim. And I have a YouTube channel, which is Viviane Bonfim as well.
Fantastic. When we are live on all of those platforms, so we'll hit there. You're a joy. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Viviane. I appreciate it. So good.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, listen, you guys have a lot of education questions you ask me. Why not reach out to an expert and a pro, especially if you are any of the things we talked about your child has experienced or is currently experiencing. Remember, it's stressful for them, and I know it's stressful for you as an adult, but they're taking on a lot of extra stress that it can be very challenging for them at their young ages. All right, Viviane, thank you so much. Guys, have a great weekend. We love you. We'll